Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
49er faithful, get ready, because today we are doing something a little bit different. We're taking a trip through NFL history to settle a debate that never seems to actually get settled. Who is the single greatest free agent signing in the history of this entire league? And yes, one of the answers absolutely wears red and gold. But that's just the appetizer. After that, we are diving straight into training camp, because there are 4 legitimate position battles happening in Santa Clara right now that could completely determine whether this roster is built for a championship or just another good but not great season. So settle in, because we've got history, we've got drama, and we've got real stakes on the line. Let's start with the free agency debate, because it's one of those conversations that never really gets old. When you think about the biggest, most electric free agency signings in the history of the NFL, a few names immediately jump off the page, and honestly, it's kind of remarkable how many of them intersect with the story of the San Francisco 49ers in one way or another. The first name that belongs in any conversation like this is Tom Brady. Now, to be fair, Brady wasn't exactly at the absolute peak of his powers when he left the New England Patriots behind. But when arguably the greatest quarterback to ever play the game becomes a free agent, that is an enormous deal no matter what stage of his career he's in. Brady signed with the Buccaneers and, in one of the most stunning first-year turnarounds in NFL history, immediately delivered a Super Bowl championship to Tampa Bay. He only played a handful more seasons after that magical run, but let's be honest, if you're a front office and you get the chance to sign a legend and cash in a free Lombardi trophy practically overnight, you make that move in a heartbeat every single time. But here's a name that deserves just as much attention in this conversation, and it happens to be one of the most electric free agency signings in 49ers history. Deion Sanders signed with San Francisco, and what happened next was nothing short of magical. Sanders only spent a single season wearing red and gold, but it was, without question, the best year of his entire legendary career. Keep in mind, we're talking about arguably the best cornerback to ever play the position, and he was somehow playing even better than he ever had before, all in that one incredible season in San Francisco. He won Defensive Player of the Year, he picked off a pass in the Super Bowl itself, and in an absolutely wild footnote to that season, Sanders actually finished tied for 3rd place in NFL MVP voting. Think about that for a second. Steve Young won the award outright that year, Barry Sanders finished in 2nd place, and then Deion tied for 3rd alongside his own teammate Jerry Rice. That means the 49ers had 3 separate players receiving actual MVP votes in the very same season. That 1994 roster was so absurdly loaded with talent that it came as no surprise whatsoever when they went out and completely demolished the Chargers in the Super Bowl that year. Then there's the case of Peyton Manning, and his free agency story is honestly one of the wildest in league history. Manning had already built a Hall of Fame Ursum in Indianapolis, winning a Super Bowl there and reaching another. But when he hit free agency, he was 35 years old and coming off a serious neck surgery that had some people around the league genuinely questioning whether his career was completely finished. There was actually real speculation at the time connecting the 49ers to Manning's free agency tour. But in the end, he signed with the Denver Broncos, a franchise willing to take a genuine gamble on one of the 3 best quarterbacks the sport has ever produced. Think about how terrifying that decision must have felt in the moment. A 35-year-old quarterback coming off a major neck injury is a scary bet under any circumstances, let alone more than a decade ago when medical technology and recovery protocols weren't nearly what they are today. But Denver took the swing, and Manning rewarded them with arguably the best statistical season of his entire career, capped off by one final Super Bowl ring before he rode off into retirement. And yet, when you really break it all down, the single greatest free agent of all time has to be Reggie White, the original free agent, the very first player in NFL history to actually sign a genuine free agent contract with a brand new team. White sits comfortably among the 10 to 15 greatest players to ever step onto an NFL field, and at 32 years old, an age where plenty of dominant players start to slow down, he was still delivering absolutely peak-level performances the moment he officially switched teams. He left Philadelphia for Green Bay and completely elevated that entire franchise to a whole new level almost overnight. But White's impact went so far beyond just his own individual statistics. He fundamentally revolutionized not just the NFL, but professional sports as a whole by helping to truly normalize the entire concept of free agency in football. There was plenty of complicated legal history tied up in how that all came together, but it's honestly no surprise at all that free agency became such a massive sport-defining institution, because Reggie White was simply that dominant the moment he changed teams and proved the entire concept could work. So there you have it, faithful. 4 legendary names, and one of them wearing the very same jersey you're wearing right now while you watch this video. Deion Sanders, Reggie White, Peyton Manning, and Tom Brady. Are there other names that deserve to be part of this conversation? Almost certainly. But it's hard to argue with any of these 4 when it comes to defining exactly what a franchise-altering free agency signing actually looks like. All right, now let's shift gears entirely and get into the meat of today's video, because training camp is right around the corner, and there are 4 legitimate position battles happening on this roster that are going to go a long way toward determining exactly what kind of season this team is capable of having. Let's start with something of an honorable mention here, because while it's not technically a battle for a starting job, it might end up being one of the most fiercely contested competitions on the entire roster. I'm talking about the depth cornerback battle, featuring veteran Jack Jones, incumbent Darrell Luter, free agent addition Nate Hobbs, and rookie Afiz Olajuwon-Price, all fighting for a limited number of roster spots behind the starters. This is going to be a genuinely fierce competition, even if it's technically happening for depth roles rather than starting jobs. Price comes in as a rookie with real long-term upside. Hobbs was signed relatively early into free agency and is currently viewed as something of a favorite. Luter is the incumbent who already knows this system inside and out, and Jack Jones might honestly be the single most talented player in that entire group, given his extensive starting experience elsewhere in the league. My honest read is that out of these 4 names, probably 2 make the final roster, maybe 3 if the coaching staff decides to get creative. But it feels like an absolute lock that at least one of these guys ends up getting cut loose by the end of camp, and it genuinely could be any single one of them. Remember, this exact type of situation played out last year with another cornerback who was viewed as the clear favorite heading into camp, only to get released before the season even started. So do not assume Hobbs or anybody else in this group is a lock just because of where they currently sit on the depth chart. Now here's a battle that I personally think deserves the most attention of anybody watching this roster all summer long. The competition at left guard. Robert Jones, Connor Colby, and a couple of other names are all fighting it out for this exact job, and in my honest opinion, this might be the single most consequential competition happening anywhere on this entire roster. Think about what's actually at stake here. Whoever wins this job is going to be directly responsible for helping keep Brock Purdy upright in the pocket all season long. They'll be lining up right alongside Trent Williams on one side and Jake Brendel in the middle, which means whoever wins this job has to genuinely hold their own next to 2 of the better players at their respective positions anywhere in football. On top of pass protection, this position also needs to open up bigger, more consistent running lanes than we saw from this offensive line a year ago, which is a massive responsibility for whoever ultimately wins the job. And honestly, any of these candidates has a real legitimate shot at winning this competition. Robert Jones has actual starting experience in this league already. Connor Colby is the incumbent, and he's actually the only player in this specific group who has already spent real time inside San Francisco's playbook. And there are a couple of other names in the mix who might genuinely be the most talented overall player among the entire group of candidates, even without direct experience in this exact scheme. Coming out of the offseason program, there does seem to be a slight edge currently trending toward Colby, but that is very much still up for grabs once real training camp reps and preseason snaps start actually happening. And here's what makes this battle so genuinely fascinating to watch. Whoever wins this job is going to be tested immediately against a genuinely explosive, newly retooled group of young defensive linemen this team brought in this offseason. If whoever wins this competition can hold up against that level of competition in practice, it bodes extremely well for how they'll perform against actual opposing defenses once the games start counting. This franchise has found real, cost-effective value at left guard before, with players who came in on modest contracts and outperformed expectations, and there's a real chance that formula repeats itself again this year. It's simply a matter of figuring out which specific player ultimately earns that job. Next up is the safety competition. And I'll be honest with you, faithful, this one is wide open in a way that isn't nearly as inspiring as the guard battle we just talked about. This group features Malik Mustafa, Marquise Sigel, Jaquiski Brown, and Ashtyn Davis all fighting for time at a position that, if we're being completely honest with each other, is probably the weakest overall group on this entire roster right now. Every single one of these players has flashed real talent at different points in their careers, but the larger question hanging over this entire competition is consistency. How many of the specific weaknesses in each of their individual games can actually get cleaned up before the games start counting for real? It's fair to call this the most wide-open position battle on the roster. And it's also fair to acknowledge that the overall talent level here just isn't quite as inspiring as some of the other spots we've already covered. That said, wide-open competitions can sometimes produce genuine surprises, and this coaching staff has shown real ability to develop players who might not have flashed the loudest resumes heading into camp. And now let's talk about the receiver room, because there's some important context here that deserves real clarification. You may have seen chatter floating around suggesting that veteran Deebo Samuel is currently on this roster battling it out with Christian Kirk for the third wide receiver job. To be crystal clear, faithful, that specific storyline is not accurate as things currently stand. Deebo Samuel is not on this roster right now. He was traded away from San Francisco to the Washington Commanders a little while back, spent a season there, and is currently sitting out there as an unrestricted free agent, with plenty of genuine reunion speculation swirling around whether he could actually make his way back to Santa Clara this offseason. That's a real and fascinating storyline in its own right, one absolutely worth watching closely, but it is a separate conversation from what's actually unfolding on the depth chart heading into training camp right now. The real competition brewing behind Mike Evans and Ricky Pearsall at the top of this receiver room involves Christian Kirk battling it out with the likes of Jacob Cowing, veteran depth pieces, and rookie Deion Stribling for meaningful snaps in the passing game. Kirk brings exactly the kind of refined, high-floor veteran presence this receiver room has been missing, a smaller, more polished route runner who the coaching staff can plug in and trust from day one. The younger names in this mix bring more raw upside and specific special teams value, but they're going to have to prove themselves against a genuinely accomplished veteran in Kirk throughout the entire summer. And look, if that Deebo Samuel reunion speculation ever actually turns into reality, it would obviously reshape this entire competition overnight, adding an entirely different kind of dynamic playmaker into the mix. But until an actual contract gets signed, this remains speculation layered on top of an already compelling, very real training camp battle currently taking shape among the players actually on this roster right now. So there you have it, faithful. 4 legitimate battles worth watching all summer long. The depth cornerback competition, which is going to be absolutely fierce even though it's not technically for a starting job. The left guard battle, which might be the single most consequential competition on the entire roster, given how directly it impacts protecting Brock Purdy and opening up running lanes. The wide-open safety competition, which remains the murkiest position group on this roster heading into camp. and the ongoing competition for meaningful snaps at wide receiver, layered with genuine intrigue about whether a familiar face might still find his way back into the mix before the season actually begins. Every single one of these battles is going to tell us something important about how deep this roster genuinely is heading into a season where the expectations in Santa Clara have never been higher. This isn't a franchise simply hoping to make the playoffs anymore. This is a franchise built to compete for a championship. And every single training camp rep between now and week 1 is going to play a real role in determining whether this roster has enough answers at every single position to actually get there. All right, faithful, I want to hear from you down in the comments section right now. Which one of these 4 training camp battles do you think is going to be the most exciting and the most competitive to watch all summer long? Do you agree that the left guard competition deserves to be considered the most important one on the entire roster? And be honest with me, who do you think is the greatest free agent signing in NFL history? Deion Sanders, Reggie White, Peyton Manning, or Tom Brady? Drop your picks down in the comments below, because I read every single one of them and I genuinely want to know where the faithful stands on all of this. If this video gave you something fun to think about heading into training camp, please do me a favor and smash that like button, because it genuinely helps this channel grow and reach even more of the faithful who need to see content like this. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we are covering every single storyline coming out of Santa Clara all summer long, all the way through training camp, all the way through the preseason, and all the way through the entire regular season. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you, and I will see you in the very next video. Go Niners!